Daisy Buchanan explained beauty, boredom, and betrayal. Hey everyone, Walter Bowne here. We're reading, or you're reading, or had read, The Great Gatsby. And let's start with chapter 1. Of course, Nick talks about his ethos at the beginning to establish his credibility as a narrator. We learn that he comes from money, he went to Yale, and he goes to New York to learn the bond business. Everyone goes to New York to learn the bond business, it seems. He rents a place in West Egg next to millionaires. So we know a lot about his background. And when I mean a lot, I mean what can be packed into, a few pages. Then he goes to East Egg, the old money address, the more fashionable of the addresses, of the eggs, to visit his second cousin who he hardly knows. Right. And her husband, Tom, an old friend, kind of, he hardly knows anyone. Now, let's take a look at the characterization of Daisy Fay. That's her maiden name, Fay, and that's significant. Why? Because Fay means fairy. Fitzgerald gets this from his favorite poet of all time, and I know this because I've read a lot about Fitzgerald, the great English romantic poet John Keats. And we'll be looking a little at Keats, later in another lecture, throughout Gatsby, because The Great Gatsby, in my opinion, is a poetic novel. And that's why I don't think The Great Gatsby has ever been filmed well, because I don't think it's possible, because there's so much poetry. How do you film poetry? I don't know. Now, Daisy, think about her name. Daisy is a flower. A traditional daisy has white petals with a yellow center. They're blooming now in my garden. It's like mid to late June. That will be significant in the novel. The white symbolizes purity, and Daisy is always in white, as we'll see here in chapter 1. But the yellow center, yellow in Gatsby is often corrupted, like overripe. It's artificial, like Gatsby's wealth, his car, the yellow Rolls Royce, dishonesty at the center of many of these characters. The Midas touch, gold. So Daisy seems pure on the outside, her white girlhood, but at her core, there's corruption. And Myrtle Wilson is also a flower, but I had that in another lecture. Let's get back to Daisy. Daisy Buchanan explained beauty, boredom, and betrayal. Hey everyone, Walter Bowne here. Nick first meets Jordan and Daisy. He observes two young women were buoyed up as though upon an anchored balloon. Now, I really like that anchored balloon thing. It just seems like it's an oxymoron, like a balloon and anchor, right? The two very different images. Balloons airy, light, anchor heavy, iron, that kind of thing. And we get the water imagery. Almost every page of The Great Gatsby contains water imagery. And everything with Gatsby is water, right? Not everything, all right? But it's Long Island Sound, it's the bay, the green light. It's just so much water imagery. And that's a whole other lecture. In fact, that's an hour lecture. But notice, they're not grounded. They're young women buoyed, right? Like a buoy, like in an ocean or in a bay. And they're floating like fairies, like Daisy Fay. Fay means fairy, remember? And they're light, ephemeral, like a butterfly, dressed in white, rippling and fluttering, all these delicate, airy words Fitzgerald uses, especially when describing Daisy. That's what I mean about being a poetic novel, a novel of verse. And have you noticed that we don't get much of a description, physical description of Daisy? Fitzgerald doesn't focus on her appearance. We know she's beautiful, but we get maybe like her hair, like golden or like blonde. But what matters to him is voice. It's Daisy's voice that intoxicates everyone. And I mean everyone, except maybe Tom. Fitzgerald brings it up again and again. One character, I won't spoil it, says her voice is full of money. So the only criticism that Gatsby, the only criticism he ever gives Daisy is about her voice, that it's full of money, that she can just retreat into money, and she never has to worry about a single thing. She made an attempt to rise. Imagine, being so bored, so wealthy, not knowing what people plan, that rising is an attempt. Well, that's privilege. That's detachment. That's weightlessness. If I have to get to work or I have to grade essays, I am not going to an attempt to rise. I'm gonna go rise and get to work. And then there's her laugh. A charming little laugh, but she's paralyzed with happiness. Paralyzed with happiness. Again, there's so many oxymorons, and that's his. I would say that is like one of his go-to default modes. Happiness should animate you, make you move. But here, it's paralyzing, it's artificial, it's numb. And that's Daisy in a nutshell. Well, not in a nutshell, but in a gin bottle. Daisy Buchanan explained. Beauty, boredom, and betrayal. Hey everyone, Walter Bowne here. Welcome back. This is lecture 3. So is Daisy happy? Really, is anyone happy in this novel? I would say no, not the ones that we get to know. Daisy is bored out of her mind. And she's just sitting on this couch in chapter 1 in the heat in her white dress, floating on the couch. She's disconnected. She's detached. Remember, she's a fairy. And then we get this line. She hinted in a murmur that the surname of the balancing girl was Baker. It's a murmur again. Murmur. Murmur. I love that. It's like M-U-R, M-U-R. Oh, I love that. That surname. And it's a soft, delicate voice. And the balancing girl is her friend, Jordan Baker. Now, listen to what Fitzgerald says. I've heard it said that Daisy's murmur was only to make people lean toward her. Wow. Talk about characterization. Daisy controls people through her voice. Lorelei? Mermaids? She's a low talker. And that she means she makes people lean in. That's power. This is one of the many reasons Fitzgerald is a master craftsman. These small, carefully chosen details make Daisy feel real. She's not just a character, she's alive on the page. And I've read Maxwell Perkins, an editor genius. It's a great book. And Thomas Wolfe, Ernest Hemingway, he was a fantastic editor. But he said, I'm reading Gatsby, and I have criticisms of it, the first draft, but it is so intricately woven. It is just, he was blown away by this. And this is someone who deals with words. Look at how Fitzgerald keeps this up. Jordan's lips fluttered. We have all these active verbs of fluttering and floating and flickering, water, lightness, air. Jordan is similar to Daisy, but also different, as we'll talk about later. And of course, I have lectures about Jordan Baker. And think about Jordan Baker's name. Jordan is a man's name, also used for a woman. Baker is occupational, strong, like a baker. She's feminine, yes, and she's very attractive, but in a feminine in a new way, a 1920s kind of feminine, a modern woman, like small-breasted. She stood erect cadet at Lake West Point. More about this to come. Well, you can go find it if you want to. Now back to Daisy's voice. A low, thrilling voice. Bright eyes, bright, passionate mouth. Notice the anaphora there. Bright repetition of words at the beginning of successive clauses. That's deliberate. It's musical. It's hypnotic. Talking about Daisy Buchanan. So this is lecture 4. Let's pick up where we left off, talking about her voice and her bright eyes and low, thrilling voice. Nick says this. She's done gay, exciting things just a while, and will do gay, exciting things again, hovering in the horizon. Notice hovering, floating, buoyed up. She's again a fairy queen, Daisy Fay. Fitzgerald doesn't just tell you who Daisy is. He weaves it through diction, imagery, sound, and text masterfully. Let's take a look at the next passage. Gatsby's name is mentioned later in the chapter when Jordan says, "You must know Gatsby if you live in West Egg." And then Daisy says, "Gatsby? What Gatsby?" Now imagine this. You haven't heard someone's name in years, and then someone casually mentions it, brings it up. And it's not some common name like, oh, you must know John Smith or Joe Johnson. It's unusual, like Maximilian, or maybe a stage name like Oh, surely you know Lady Gaga. Something that sticks. Daisy mentions it, then drops it, but then comes back later. Jordan says, when Jordan recounts to Nick, later that night, she came to me and came to my room and says, "What Gatsby? It surely is, it must be someone I used to know." This doesn't seem like someone Daisy is still in love with, but again, I don't think Daisy can love. Fitzgerald here is crafting. He plays with us. We don't actually meet Gatsby until chapter 3. Fitzgerald teases, drops hints, plants little clues like breadcrumbs for us to follow. And then we get this beautiful image. Slenderly, languidly, their heads set lightly upon their hips, the two young women preceded us out into the rosy-colored porch, open toward the sunlight. A daisy needs sun. And if there's no sunlight, well, at least there might be candles, right? And there's 4 candles, and of course, there's 4 people in the house. Daisy needs light around her. It's white, bright, rosy-colored, shining, glowing. So the very thing is outside. It's almost like the pathetic fallacy, right? Where a writer would use the weather or outside circumstances or conditions to reflect Daisy's sad, it's going to rain, right? Or it's raining, Daisy's sad. Daisy's happy, the sun comes out. We see that in chapter 5. And then Daisy, why candles? Isn't there enough light in the room for me? What a strange thing to say, right? She needs that brightness, that glow, that attention. And it's almost like it's the spotlight. She is the spotlight. And then we get this famous line from Daisy. In 2 weeks, it'll be the longest day of the year. Do you always watch for the longest day of the year and miss it? I always watch for the longest day in the year and miss it. It's so repetitive, it works. Hey everyone, Professor Bowne here talking about Gatsby, well, Daisy Buchanan, and lecture 5. So if you're just tuning in, that's fine. Welcome. So let's talk about Daisy Buchanan. In chapter 1, she's looking at people radiantly, and Fitzgerald showing her glowing, her shining, her presence. And then she says, we've got to plan something, right? Plan. What do people plan, right? Even Jordan Baker is bored. They're just floating around, sitting around, detached on the sofa, and they're so rich, and they have nothing to do. I bet you're not like this. Your parents aren't like this, but these are like the 1%ers because they really don't have to work, and they don't really have to go to PTAs and go to Little League, and they don't go out to PJ Willihan's or Fridays for some appetizers with friends, right? Yeah, they golf and they just sit around. They sit around their yacht. But we have grocery bills. We have bills to pay. We have the house to clean. We have to manage real life. They're not doing, Daisy's not doing any cleaning. She's not paying any bills. And you're not going to see her at Wegmans or Acme, right? Can you imagine? Daisy Buchanan at Acme. I got to write a satire about that. And she has no purpose in life. There's no responsibilities. She has no idea what to do with her life. Same thing with Tom, in a way. At least Jordan is a sportswoman, right? She's, an athlete, but still, it's not like what we all have to go through. And that's the key word, bored. A bored husband with a bored woman with a husband who's not paying any attention to her. And what happens when you put that equation together? Well, 1 + 1, you can already guess, especially when she knows her husband's been having affairs. Like currently, the girlfriend is calling her house, which is insane. But now let's get to the next part of the scene where everyone in the novel is from the West, right? Tom's from the West, Daisy, Jordan, Nick, West, West, West. And you can say Louisville is not really West, but it is West when you think about the original 13 colonies. And they all moved to New York. Why? Well, if you can make it there, you can make it anywhere, right? Frank Sinatra, it's New York, the center of excitement, wealth, the American dream. But Nick's not used to this kind of aimless, shallow conversation. And then he jokes, you make me feel uncivilized, Daisy. That's ironic. Can't we talk about crops or something? All right, crops, farming, Midwest talk, grounded talk, real talk. It's funny, and he's basically saying, I'm not sophisticated enough for all you rich, bored nonsense. Hey people, Professor Bowne here again, talking about Daisy Buchanan, Lecture 7, The Great Gatsby. So that voice, the instant her voice broke off, we're talking about Chapter 1, that voice again, always back to the voice. We get more description of Daisy Buchanan through sound than we ever get visually, and we get very, very little visually. Fitzgerald focuses on what she sounds like, not what she looks like. Why? Because she's a siren. She's the Lorelei, right? She's a mermaid. She is intoxicating. It's a deathless song, Fitzgerald calls it. Now, check this out. The lamp light bright on her hair, the color of an autumn leaf. Now, I actually had someone like saying, oh, wait a second, Daisy's hair is dark colored. I'm like, wait. All right, it's not. The only time it's ever described that is when Gatsby is telling Nick about he kissed her dark hair, because it's because it's dark. It's not because she has black hair or like brown hair, but it has to be an autumn leaf. It has to be yellow because she's a daisy, right? She's white and then the yellow. But the physical description, it's yellow, but not golden. It's dying yellow. It's the autumn leaf. It's not like the yellow of nature's first green is gold from frost, right? Because that's positive. This is autumn. And there are different types of yellow. We have gold that represents wealth, warmth, and power. And we have autumn yellow. It's beautiful but dying, like by beech trees in the fall. They're the last to turn, and they're gorgeous. It's ripe, but ripeness leads to rot. So more words here. There is glinting, fluttering, flickering. All these light, delicate, but fading words describe Daisy. And it's all done on purpose, people. And then Daisy says, oh, we're from Louisville. We spent our white girlhood in Louisville. White girlhood. But then it breaks off, interrupted, fragmented like her life. Because Tom enters, the person who destroys things because he's a cannon, right? He's violent. Did you give Nick a little heart-to-heart on the veranda? He demands. Now, why is Tom interrupting? He's worried. He knows Daisy's been talking about him to Nick, probably about how terrible he is and how he hurts her. Boom, destruction, force. He destroys Daisy's thoughts. He shatters her sentences. And look at this moment when she says, look at you, you brute of a man. Hulking, you're hulking. Like Incredible Hulk. Tom's like, I hate that word. Salt in the wound. She knows who Tom is, and she's not afraid to say it. Not really. All right, more later. Professor Bowne here. 8th lecture on Chapter 1 about Daisy Buchanan. For someone so artificial, man, there's still a lot to talk about. But anyway, we understand Daisy's confronting Tom. And the only way she can really, because she has no power, she's a woman, and she has no power. Tom can do whatever he wants to do. And the only way she can get at him is like little nitpicky things. And then Tom's like, he made these earlier racist nonsense comments, right, about the white races. And then Daisy's like, did we talk about the Nordic race? Yeah, I'm sure we did. It crept up, right? So she's mocking his idiocy. The only way she can really combat her husband, now, she's not going to divorce the guy, even though she probably should. It's going to be the biggest weapon she'll have against Tom is to do her own flirtation with Gatsby, someone who's rich, not like his kind of rich, but still someone who may be able to defeat him, which we'll see in Chapter 7 what happened. So Daisy's teasing him, mocking his white supremacy talk. Oh yeah, we talked about being white people. That's what we did, right, Tom? She's making fun of him, sarcastic, bitter. And why? She knows about the affair. She knows about some person. She doesn't know who Myrtle is, but she knows. But what she can do? Nothing. She has no power. All she can do are these snide remarks and embarrassing him before Jordan and Nick about, you're a brute, you hurt my thumb, blah, 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 my, whatever, black and blue. And Nick's thinking, I really hope she can just leave this crazy situation and get out of here. But will she? We'll see. And because, she's going to have her own romance, and we can debate whether or not she's has any feelings towards this guy, or is it just novelty. It's something different. It's straight out of a romance, the canard starline and the nightingale that she brings up at the party. And isn't it romantic, Tom? Isn't it romantic? So she's looking for romance. Actually, she's just looking maybe for a hookup. That's crude. I wouldn't say that, but so Daisy is beautiful on the outside and corrupt at the core. She's floating in white dresses, talking about romance, nightingales, the longest day of the year because she's a daisy and needs light. And beneath it all, she's bored, trapped, and desperate for something more. And yet, she can't help but lean in. That's Fitzgerald's genius. Daisy's not cliche. She's tragic, she's dangerous, she's magnetic, and she's already broken by the world she was born into. And this is only chapter 1. The whole novel is going to peel away those layers, piece by piece, until we're staring straight at that yellow core of decay. We have to ask, was Gatsby chasing something real, or just the shimmer of a dream that was already dead, or an illusion? But we'll get there. For now, remember, Daisy's voice is beautiful, intoxicating, but beauty doesn't mean truth. And that's the tension Fitzgerald wants us to wrestle with.